Today's conversation is very tender. It's about unimaginable pain, but it's also about how God carries us through the fire. Welcome to Glory and Grit, where faith meets real life. I'm your host, Stephanie, and today's episode is tender and personal. I'm sharing a part of my story that I never thought would become a part of my testimony. The loss of my mother, the trauma that followed, and the long and complicated journey to forgiving my stepfather, the person who is responsible. This episode isn't about reliving violence, but it's about the God that stepped into the darkest moments of my life and slowly and gently began to heal what I thought was beyond repair. My prayer for you is that as you listen, your heart finds comfort, your faith finds strength, and you're reminded that God truly is close to the brokenhearted. Let's take this journey together. Let me tell you about my mother. She was an amazing woman, as we all think our mothers are. She was, right off the top, one of the first things that you notice about her is her $1 million smile. And that's because she had a gold tooth. And she worked really hard to keep this gold tooth shiny at all times. So whenever she smiled, there was this sparkle from her smile. She was a very authoritative parent. No fuss, no muss, no mess. She was also very loving. She would go to the ends of the earth to do anything for her only living daughter, myself. If it would help me, if it would push me, if it would protect me, there's nothing that she wouldn't do if it was for my benefit. Her love was unconditional. She loved her granddaughter very much and quite enjoyed the experience of being a grandmother. She was very proud of that and very fond of her granddaughter. What else? She was strong and strong-willed. She was no fuss, no muss. Let's see. She talked really fast. She was interested in generational securities, like making sure her children and grandchildren, her posterity, had some place to call home and some place to go to. She was what you would call a forever student because she was always in school, always learning, trying to better herself. And I used to tease her about being a forever student. She loved her final career of her life, and that was nursing. She absolutely adored nursing. She started as the medical profession, I guess I should say. She started as a CNA. She went on to be paramedics, 2 different levels of that. Then she went into nursing school and did LPN, and then she was doing RN studies. So she absolutely loved that career. She was awesome, and she was my hero. Now, my mother was murdered by someone that should have protected her, that should have loved her and guarded her, that should have protected me, that should have protected my daughter, who was 2 years old and witnessed this heinous act as it was unfolding. Um, when I got that phone call, I couldn't believe what my grandmother had said. I I drove to the city where they were, just blank, just um empty, void. I wasn't sure what I heard, and I wasn't sure that someone we trusted, someone we loved, someone we allowed to come into our life could do something like that, would do something like that, and with the amount of violence that went along with the act. So I was just empty as we were driving there. But honey, I tell you, when I did start to feel things, I was feeling a lot of emotions, from a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, confusion. Um, I was angry, not per se at God, because there's no point in being angry with God, but I was angry with my stepfather, who I had lovingly given the title of my father, accepted as my father. And I struggle even today. Sometimes I'll say my father and I'll instantly correct myself and say stepfather. But I was angry. I mean, I was angry with him, not only for taking what he took, but the hideous way in which he did it, and in the presence of my daughter, who was 2 going on 3 at that time. I was angry a little at my mom for having been in that situation. I was angry that my daughter had to see that. And I was angry that this kind of thing was happening in my world, this close to home. For a woman who was so strong and she was like a warrior princess. She was very strong-willed, very independent, very independent. And like I said, a no fuss, no muss kind of girl. So I was angry at everybody that this had happened in my world. Then the confusion set in of how could someone who professed to love her do that to her? How could someone who professed to love my granddaughter wholeheartedly, I'm sorry, to love my daughter, their granddaughter, wholeheartedly, and then do something like that in front of her and have her experience that at that young age, not really knowing what she was experiencing? And I guess that would be questions, because how, why, and I've never been one to ask God why, because I've always felt that God never promised us that life would be easy. He just promised us that it would be worth it. So I think Jesus came here. He was hung on the cross, spat on, um, poked with a spear on the cross, nailed to the cross. So he didn't have it easy. Why should any of the rest of us have it easy? But I was wondering, like, why would such a thing happen in front of my daughter? And why would a woman so strong and powerful allow this to happen? I'm not going to trauma dump you with all the details of what happened. Um, because that's not what I want you to take from this. This is not an episode about violence. This is not an episode about domestic violence. This is not an episode about forgiving someone quickly. This is an episode about how God shows up in the middle of our mess and helps us get through it. So that is what I want to focus on. I apologize if I reference it too much, but this will be the first time I have ever talked about this, and I'm not quite sure how to go about it. But my hopes is that if you have experienced loss or had something negative happen to you by anyone, and you are at a point where you need to forgive and you're not quite sure how to go about that, I'm not here to tell you how to live life. I'm here to testify to you that God can help you get through life and all its messiness. I also felt betrayed. I felt betrayed by someone that we had let into our home. We had let into our lives. We had let into our families. From my home, her home, my grandmother's home, and someone that he'd invited into his family, because she did go with him back to visit his family where they were from. And so I felt very betrayed that he would do that. And please don't think that because I'm making this episode of the podcast, that this was an easy task, that I just woke up and said, oh, I'm going to forgive him. It's all good. I forgive him. Because that didn't happen like that. This was years in the making. I said I had forgiven him, but I hadn't really. And we'll talk more about that later. Next, I'm going to talk about what forgiveness is and what forgiveness isn't. Forgiveness is letting go of the hatred. But I tell you, I really hated that man. I hated his very existence, his core, his everything about him down to the last hair on his head. I hated him with such a passion that it was taking over me. I was unhappy. I was depressed. I was not the full version of me that I wanted to be, because this hatred was eating at me. It was basically eating me away. So forgiveness is learning to release the hold that the hatred has on you. We'll talk more about that too. Because you're forgiving someone for something they did doesn't mean you're excusing the act in which they did against you. It doesn't mean that you are now accepting that they did this to you and it's okay. We can just forget about it. No, honey. There is no forgetting. Okay. But there is letting go of the hatred that's eating away at you. Okay? And by learning to forgive, you are not changing the person, because they are what they are. They did what they did. But you are releasing yourself from the responsibility of feeling this immense hatred towards that person. Does that make sense? Forgiveness does not mean you're reconciling with them, right? You're laying boundaries. When this first happened, and he said that he didn't do it, I made a visit with my grandmother. We took a phone call. But the minute he said guilty, pled to guilty, I don't care if it was for a lower sentence, whatever it was for. The minute you tell me you are guilty of that heinous act, there is no reconciliation. There is nothing but a boundary set between us, and you are not allowed to cross that boundary. You no longer have access to me. I can forgive you, and I can have peace in my heart, and I can let go of the hatred, but there will be boundaries, and you will not have access to me the way you did before you broke my family, before you broke me. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. We know it happened. Now we have to live our life in a new environment because this did happen. Forgiveness means that you choose freedom instead of bitterness. That was kind of a tough one to swallow. It's a tough one to pull off, right? But forgiveness takes away all of that negativity, which is eating at you and tearing you apart and doing nothing good for you. So forgiveness releases all those bad emotions, all those bad vibes, all those bad feelings, all those bad thoughts. And this all we'll talk about helps to make you better, to make your life better, to become more of the person that you want to become. Obedience to God, even when your heart wasn't ready. And I can tell you, it was years before I was obedient to this. It was years before allowing God to help me through this process of forgiveness, because clearly I could not do it on my own. Society is another issue. They would have you think, oh, you just have to be strong. Oh, you just got to move on. That's done and over with, whatever. Honey, tell them to go kick rocks. You do not have to be strong all the time. You certainly don't have to move on when you've been wronged. I mean, you do need to, kind of eventually get there, but there's no time limit. God doesn't say you have to grieve, you have to forgive, you have to let go in 5 minutes after an incident happens. God doesn't rush our healing. He doesn't rush how we handle our pain. He just wants us to trust Him enough to turn our pain over to Him and to let Him come in with us and help us get through it. Yes, you will get there to moving on, but it may not be the day after. It may not be the week after. It may not be the year after. It may not be a decade later. It may be a long time, but as long as you are working through it and allowing the Lord to come in your life and in your heart, that's just fine. You take all the time you need to work on you. Don't let anybody convince you that you have to forgive and you have to be ready to move on right then, because you don't. take your time and truly work through the process so that you're truly healed when you get to the other end of it. So it's very important that you remember that forgiveness is not a single action. It is a process, an ongoing process. It doesn't happen overnight. Take your time to work through it so that you can honestly heal through this. Now, you remember earlier I said that I had forgiven him because the Lord commanded it. It was years later that a turning point hit in my life where I realized I had not forgiven that man. I had said the words, but I had not done the work. I remember when that hit me. We were having a ward correlation meeting one Sunday morning, and this is where the ward branch bishop or president and his counselors and all of the organization presidents come together for a meeting to discuss the members of their ward or branch and how they can serve them and help them to do things that need to be done and to help them spiritually and any other way that we can. And in this meeting, there's always a spiritual thought or scripture. And usually it's passed around to everyone in the meeting. So this Sunday, it was my turn to do it. And I thought, okay, what am I going to talk about? And I thought, I was reading my scriptures and I hit the scripture on forgiveness. And I thought, well, I could talk about that because I had to forgive my stepfather, right? And then it became a thought that I could hear audibly in my head. But did you though? What? But did you? Did you really forgive him? I think we need to work on that. And I was like floored. Like, no, I've already done that. No, you haven't. I can laugh about it now, but it was quite painful to think that there was more I needed to do to be done with this. That was a turning point because I realized that there was work I had to put in to really forgive this man. Mind you, that does not mean that I was going to allow him to have access to me. But I still needed to forgive him in my heart because as I did a self-eval during those moments, those times right after that, you need to work on a conversation. I realized that I had not. I realized that I loathed him. I just, I was like, if he was on fire, I wouldn't even, well, that was a very un-Christ-like thought, but that's how I felt. Like I told you, I'm here for raw, honest conversations. And I'm telling you, I hated the man. And did I want him dead? Mm-mm. I wanted him to suffer. I wanted him to hurt the way he hurt us. And the way I'm sure that he hurt her when he did what he did to her. The way that he did it to her. I realized that I could not take that hatred and unforgiving part of myself away on my own. I realized that I was going to have to get help. And I was going to have to not only invite God into my heart to take away the hate, but I was also going to have to let him in to help me do the work. This involved me doing a lot of prayer, fasting and praying, a lot of scriptures, a lot of listening for God's responses. And doing that also meant I needed to learn how he speaks to me, because God speaks to each of us individually in a way that we specifically understand or feel or hear. I have never heard God audibly. Well, I did one time, and I argued with him verbally and was disobedient at the end, and it cost me something. Never have I heard a voice again. But I do hear him through how I feel. There's a very specific feeling that I get when I hear God talk to me, or when I hear him respond to me, to questions and answers and whatnot. So that was a good thing that came out of that. I learned how God talked to me since I was disobedient the first time and argued with him, that now I have to look for another way. So it's a lot to invite God in to help you, but you also have to accept the help. You have to accept the answers, and you have to work with what he gives you for your good, for your benefit, to help you. Not just empty prayers. Like, I had to pray specifically, help me forgive him. Um, Help me let go of the hatred in my heart. Help me to be a better person, a better mother, a better friend, and learn to let go and let God. I got that from VeggieTales. Let go and let God. Even now, as you can see, I'm still struggling with the anger and the emotions that come from this. So just talking about this with you has brought all this back up for me, and it feels really raw and really tender. So I have to remind myself throughout this whole conversation, you've already been through this. You have processed this. The Lord has brought you through it, and he's walked with you through it. You are fine. But the emotions can get away from you if you're not careful. So we have to remember that, again, forgiveness is an ongoing process. Okay. This is not you forgave him yesterday, and that day of forgiveness is going to last you forever. This is an ongoing process, and it will get easier and easier. But it also helps you to remember that God is still there, right in the middle of your mess. He's still there. He didn't go anywhere, and he's not going to go anywhere. It would be very good if you could get help from a therapist or from your pastor or branch president or ward president. Unfortunately, I didn't know enough to go do that. And I wish I had, because I know that I couldn't afford a therapist at the time, but I could have gone to my church leaders to have them help me to work through. If you have access to that, I would strongly advise that you seek that help. and gather community around you. I had good friends who were there for me through the funeral and the burial and all the mess that comes after that. And I had good people who were there to help me. In this process, I had to realize that forgiveness was for me, not that joker. Forgiveness was for me. It was to heal me. It was to help me, not him. Because he's still walking around doing what he's doing, did what he did, and moves on. Whether it's in jail or whether it's out now, I don't know. So the forgiveness was for me, not for him, because it was turning me into somebody I did not want to be. And it was also a miserable place to be in. Like I said earlier, it just eats away at you. I actually wrote a paper about this, and I actually referred to it as my unborn baby and how it affected my body. And if I can find it, it's been a couple of years ago. If I can find it, I will include it on the website and you can read it. I thought it was a nice, not nice, but I thought it was it got good reviews from the people who checked it and rated it and whatnot. So it's for you. Forgiveness is for you, not for the person that wronged you. And they still did what they did. Forgiving them won't change that. And it certainly will not change them, but it will have a positive effect on you. It will change your life for the better. It will also lift the weight on your heart. I'm telling you, when I when I finally went through that process and learned to forgive him, there's a physical weight that comes off you. I don't know how to describe it, but when you've been in pain for so long and the hatred is eating at you for so long, when you finally work with God to remove that, it feels like a physical manifestation of the weight of that coming off you. This was God working on me while walking with me through all of this. That's the only way I could do it. I could not have forgiven him any other way. Again, forgiveness, but not access. Okay. In closing, if you're struggling to forgive, to let go, to rebuild yourself, or if you have anger that you haven't let go yet, I want you to hear me. Hear me. Forgiveness takes time. God will be there. He will walk you through every moment. He is not rushing you. God is not rushing your healing. He's not rushing your disappointment. He's not rushing your pain. He just wants to help you get through it. You don't need to feel guilty if you're struggling. I struggled for years. I'm even struggling to get through this conversation. So God understands. He knows. He loves you and he wants to help you get through this. You just have to let him. You're not broken if you feel angry. You're only human. It's a human thing to feel angry when someone has hurt you. It's okay. You feel it, then you let the Lord help you work through it. God is patient, present, and gentle. Your healing is important. It's important to Him. My healing is important to Him. And that's the only way I could have done it. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Glory and Grit. I want to leave you with this scripture. Matthew 11:28. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. If this episode blessed you, share it with someone else who you think it might be helpful for. Remember, glory doesn't come without grit, but with God, even your grit becomes glory.